something really unfortunate about today's society, more importantly, my generation, is the fact that we are so, I don't know what word you would actually use, maybe narrow minded, ignorant, stubborn. Maybe stubborn's not a right word, but I would say ignorant and narrow minded just to say the least. According to my generation, the Gen Zs, we don't even know half of our own, United States history, and we don't even know why we celebrate certain federal holidays. Now, the reason why we celebrate these federal holidays is because these are landmarked as important days in our history that we deem as important. A day that holds a lot of importance in our history that marked some type of significant event that helped change something over the course of history. And to a lot of people, unfortunately, nowadays, it's just become a day off, which is probably the worst reason to have a day, to celebrate, especially if you're just going to say, oh, July 4th is a day for hot dogs and hamburgers and a nice cold beer to wash it down. But in reality, if you want to look at history, July 4th, 1776, the rest follows. And I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier, and I said, yeah, happy Labor Day, blah, blah. And he actually asked me a question. He goes, what is Labor Day? And I'm just thinking to myself, I said, do you actually not know what Labor Day is? And it's kind of unfortunate, that I've been on this world about 25 years, and people in my similar age group have no idea what half of our federal holidays, signify. But yet we think to ourselves that we know so much already. And of course, with my current generation, Gen Z, we think that we're know-it-alls when in reality, we barely know the tip of the iceberg. So, just a little short, according to the U.S. Department of Labor, hence Labor Day, the day is, quote, an annual celebration of social and economic achievements of American workers. This is the holiday that stems from the late 1800s when labor activists wanted a federal holiday to recognize workers' contributions to the country. Now, you can take this any way you want, and a lot of people don't recognize Labor Day because I don't know why, but if it's being recognized in this country, the United States, I would think that if you're given the day off, that you should celebrate it. You should recognize that this is a day in American history, especially something that happened in the late 1800s. We're talking over 120 something years ago, that an important event happened to where it's like, hey, we'll recognize the important labor that was contributed to the development of this country. And a lot of people don't recognize that. And it's really unfortunate because the contributions to this country, hence construction, sewer, electrical, gas, everything, pretty much what helps run this country. A lot of people, I believe, don't give enough respect to those types of industries. And of course, you can see it got to the point where labor activists wanted an actual federal holiday, not a week, just one day to recognize that their work has not gone unnoticed. Now, unfortunately, nowadays we can't even remember why we celebrate certain days. I know there's a lot of, events in history that signify important, key dates that will always be remembered in our history, whether it's like 9/11, July 4th, Martin Luther King Day, whatever you want to call it. But it's sometimes like the smaller holidays that people would think that are not really recognized or shouldn't really stand out if you think about it. But how do we not know what Labor Day signifies? A lot of people think like, oh, it's a day that, we all don't work. And of course, a lot of people don't even know that it's simply just, it's a celebration of, the social and economic achievements from American workers, not people outside the country. We're talking about people who work in the country, anybody who, I guess at this point in time, in this point in history, who has contributed on a social or economic scale to helping build up the country to where it is now. And they did not ask for a whole lot. They just asked for one day of recognition. And that's where the holiday stems from. And, back then the labor activists were huge because, majority of who, majority of people who made up this country in the workforce were like labor, unions and whatnot. But to recognize a worker and their contribution to the country and what they built up, is something that I think has really gone unnoticed. And, you know, when you look at people who've contributed to this country, whether it's construction, electrical, plumbing, and I'm talking about nowadays, because of course I wasn't there in the late 1800s. But when you look at these people in these types of industries, you think to yourself, it's like, wow, how can I contribute back to these people? How can I give back? And I'm not saying you have to give all your life savings to them. I'm not saying you have to bow down your knees and, kiss their feet. Whenever I see someone who works in that industry, like I think it was a couple months ago, easy example. I was at a coffee shop and I saw this guy and he was buying a coffee and he looked like I want to say either an electrician or a plumber. The guy had really thick leather shoes on, so I knew as a fact, I'm like, he's probably a contractor or something like that. And he was dirty, grimy, and all he wanted was a coffee. And it must have been like maybe 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning. And, I believe it was just, he was in front of me, and I walked over to the side of him, excuse me, sir, not to disrespect you in any form of way. I said, "Do you mind if I put that on my tab?" And this guy looked at me, and this guy was clearly in his 40s or 50s, and he didn't have a look of like disrespect. He didn't have a look of like, "Wow, thank you." He just kind of looked at me like, I really don't know how to answer that type of look. Just kind of like not sure how to proceed. I said, "If it's okay with you, I see that you look like you're an extremely hard worker." And I said, "I appreciate all the work you do, whatever industry you work in. I don't want to assume. We all don't want to assume nowadays, right?" And it turns out that he was a plumber, and plumbers are extremely tough work. People think that's easy work. You just learn how to, jerry rig pipes. That's probably the most disrespectful thing you could say to a plumber. Plumbing takes years and years to learn the trade. It's not even a skill; it's a trade. And this guy looked at me. He's like, "Wow, I appreciate that." He's like, "You'd be willing to buy me a coffee?" I said, "Honestly, like for what you do, you keep pipes running clean. You keep everything just like tight, non-leaking. I would hope so, right? You have a lot of schemish plumbers out there." And he said, "I'll take you up on that offer." And he did. A lot of times people usually say, "I appreciate, but no thank you." And this guy took me up on my offer. And now we're talking, a couple dollar coffee. But it's not about the money value. It's about the recognition that signifies what was most important here. This guy recognized that I recognized his work, his trade, and that a lot of people literally shit on these industries when in reality, these are the types of industries that keep a large portion of our society going. If you didn't have people in the, electrician field working on our electricity, working on the power grids, it would all go down. You wouldn't have electricity. If you didn't have people working on like the gas plants, the plumbing, the sewer lines, then everything would literally turn to shit. Literally. And, for someone like this who, took me up on my offer to accept this kind gesture, and I'm not saying this to brag, I'm just saying it in a form of, hey, this is what it all stems back from. The U.S. Labor Department said, hey, let's celebrate one day out of the year, 365-day year, just one day to recognize that workers and their contribution to this country have not gone unnoticed. And it doesn't have to be Labor Day for you to actually like say something nice to someone who's a laborer or whatever you want to call it. You can do it any day of the week. It doesn't matter. And for someone who like myself, who I wouldn't say understand to the fullest amount, like how and why the U.S. Department of Labor came to the agreement to recognize social and economic achievements of American workers and to give one day to us. But I do know that we're recognizing workers and their contribution to the country on this day. And that's what's most important. We're giving back, we're recognizing them. And it's worth more than monetary. It's worth more than, just saying like, thank you. It's recognizing that their work has not gone unnoticed because it's helped create a foundation for our country that a lot of people either don't appreciate because it's been given to them or it's already been set in stone, figuratively and literally. But that's why I try my best whenever I see people in these professions you say, hey, can I help you out with this? Can I buy you that beer? I've bought beer for, I believe it was an electrician. It was like a while back. And I went over to, bartender and say, hey, what is that guy drinking over there? And he's like, oh, I don't know, like probably a Corona. I said, buy him another Corona. Don't tell him who bought it from. And then she was really puzzled. She was like, may I ask why? I'm like, yeah, because he looks like he's a hard worker. He's blue collar. I said, I respect what the guy does. I said, but out of respect and trying to be humble, I said, don't tell him it was me. Just put it on my tab. I'll pay right now. And, when he finishes up his beer, just bring him another. And she was like, wow, that's really nice of you. I said, just trying to give back. So, I'm not saying all of you have to give back to these, specific, groups of people. But, whether it's like a first responder, a nurse, a fireman, a police officer, electrician, plumber, these guys, or construction, these guys work their asses off every single day. And they basically create like the foundation and they help maintain it. So we can go out and do our job, or, live privileged, if you want to call it that. Because we don't have to worry about sewer lines collapsing. We don't have to worry about like power lines falling down and hitting us. We don't have to worry about our electricity going down. We have people literally on standby to fix these things. So, I think it's very underrated to have even just one day, celebrating these people who, work so hard to contribute that much to our country. So, other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed the podcast. Hope you have more an idea now of why we celebrate Labor Day, because it is a very important part of our history that a lot of people simply maybe just aren't aware of. I know a lot of people in my generation might be either unaware or just not really care about it. They may just think about it as it's another day off for me, and it's another day just to kick back and relax and not have to go to work, which is absolutely the opposite of what I just spoke about. So, other than that, hope you guys enjoyed the podcast, and I will talk to you guys next time. Take care.